locked into another edition of the Ravens Voice. This is our October 11th edition. This is Zealous here, and with Tierson.
Hello.
So we had a really fun topic this week. One thing we were asking for was a community response about how members approach the fundamentals of building your AC, theory crafting the armored core. I think it was called. Let's face it. The garage process is something that affects us all. No matter how fast you want to get into a match or whatever you want to do, you've got to land some form of customization somewhere. So, you'll find design threads almost anywhere the community go, especially through forums. You'll find different posts through people's ACs. But what's the process behind that? How do you come up with the design, and how do you work that out personally? I think it's a pretty fun topic that we don't always get into, and that players don't always get to voice. So we had some pretty fun responses with that. We're going to be marching on through it and just checking out what we can draw from the various responses we've had, and then putting in some of our own spin on it and going from there.
That's right. But before we get to that, I have to do my plugs, dude. I have to do them.
Rolling,
Okay. So
rolling.
yeah, don't forget. Don't forget that you got to go to armoredcorelegacy.com. The most active Armored Core forums are going right now. Also, if you want to email us, you can go to send an email to ravensvoiceacl@gmail.com. We also do have a dedicated section over at Armored Core Legacy, and also kind of a little bit of news on that. We're actually going to have parts of the website actually popping up on that, not just a forum site here soon.
Hmm.
We have gotten a good chunk of that done finally, and so that'll be popping up. It's about 6-7 weeks behind schedule on that too. All right.
Just a little off, but it'll be there. So keep an eye out for it. And naturally, this is going to be a portal for other pieces of ACL that will be launching in the future, and other parts of the site we like to build, and some other projects to look out for. So stay tuned for that. Keep posted. There will be updates on that as time goes on, and should be a lot of fun.
Yes, and also for a couple things on that. Talk about here a little bit. I'll talk about it more next week. But we will also be looking to add on to the staff over at ACL, especially when it comes to the website section. So if you do websites, you do code, HTML, and all that good stuff that Zealous and I particularly don't like doing. We're looking for somebody new. We're looking for a fifth member to join us over there. Again, I'll be talking more about that next week. But on the topic of websites, even still, I do want to ask, where is ACO?
This has been a pretty pivotal event as far as where the sites disappeared to. It's been a number of days now. I think is it a week? Is it a
Couple
week?
weeks.
Weeks,
Couple
a
weeks.
couple weeks transpired about it, and I mean, it's one of our main forums, one of our hubs for the community, and it's. I'm not too certain about exactly what caused the issue. Where is the disappearance? I know Tierson's not, but we're just curious if anyone out there has a specific idea of where things are standing. What's the current status or ETA, or just what were some of the initial causes? Please throw a note, post up, email. In fact, probably posting would be the best idea. You want to keep the community informed of this. I'm curious myself.
If it's something horrible and you don't want other people to know, then just email us, and then we won't say who sent it to us. We originally found out about this because we had noticed a little while back that EJ had posted in a tournament that happened in a few days before Christmas, which
Yeah.
is an interesting choice for that. But we were checking up on it, seeing how it was going, seeing if there was a lot of people that were going to participate. Noticed that there wasn't a lot of people that had signed up for you. So I was wondering, well, maybe a lot of people don't even know about it. You know, I the then the fact that there's not a great relationship between us and ACO is not news. But it's more important to that though is the fact that participating in events for the community is always important, and that's something that we want to promote regardless. So I noticed that not a lot of people had signed up yet or anything for it. So so I went over to ACO because I looked on the Facebook feature. So I went over to ACO a couple weeks ago and noticed that it wasn't up and running. And this isn't the first time that this has happened, apparently. So, we waited a little bit, and I even emailed EJ, and that's when I thought maybe there's something up because even the email came back
Yeah. Yeah.
saying that it couldn't deliver it. And this was an email address that I had contacted him on several times in the past. So, yeah, very interesting. The Facebook page is still up and it's still getting a couple posts. So we're not sure what to think of it, but yeah, EJ, if you're still listening, if you're still caring about the AC community, we want to plug your event, but we're not sure. We're not sure if we should. We're not sure if it's going to happen. So, yeah, but if you guys have any news on this, yeah, let us know. And we got it. Hopefully, it's still going. Hopefully, there's still an event happening in late December. That would be fun. Okay, so before we get into what everyone else posted, which is great, by the way, I love all the different ideas that people have and all the different posts that we got.
Hmm.
Let's delve a little bit into how we approach things, how we theory craft our ACs, and let's start with you.
Sure.
Let's start with you, else, because you have a very. And most people who know you know this as well. You start off with almost the same premise every time. So, um, which I think is fascinating. I have my main leg types that I use, and I'm sure most people do. But I will steer away from that. Whereas you stay on the straight and narrow on this. You stick with your
Yep.
build. So
It,
go ahead,
it's
explain it.
the key that starts with me for building an AC as well. It has to be a quad. Well, no, if it's not, I don't want to play it. It's that simple. So that's always just the most obvious and natural approach to it. But besides that, knowing that base of legs and that play style that I've always enjoyed, a lot of it, at least for me, begins with a theme. Okay, and by a theme, I mean an overall objective of what do I want to accomplish with this design. One thing I point to, and of course we're going to talk about this as we go on. Berserk Dragon, I think, had a similar perspective. He's an MTG, Magic player, and he says, he builds his ACs like he builds his deck. He starts with an idea and something that makes him go, I want to do that, and he goes all in with it. I can totally identify with that. While I don't quite bring MTG into it, it's the same concept with me. I start with that theme. So uh, one thing for me is with whatever theme I'm going with, I'll try to follow it to the utmost. If I'm going to go with a certain weapon type, occasionally I've themed it around that. I'll have design that will specifically attempt to use a certain pair of arms or a certain weapon set. I'll build around that from there. And the mobility, the speed, and the rest of the categories all start to slowly assemble, and I put them in very general terms. It's like a set of Legos before you. Anybody who probably like Legos, you probably dig Armored Core too. But
Awesome. We're getting a Legos analogy. I love it.
I just try to take each of those separate pieces and look at them for not just what they are, but how each will fit into my design. And if any of those pieces have to be modified, shaped, whittled down, or expanded to better expound upon a certain aspect of that design, they will. So again, the theme is always paramount, but footwork is always something that I put extreme emphasis on with any design, and that's not just through piling. Naturally, you're going to learn the most of that while you're actually playing. Learning how to not just use your cover properly and whatnot, but good movement, good efficient movement. Using your boost correctly and whatnot, but accomplishing that too. That's part of that's going to be weaved into your design. So naturally, your generator combination with your booster. Back in the day, we referred to your BGR combo, your booster generator radiator. Especially through Nexus 9-breaker LR era, that was really a key to success with any design. Since we're missing the radiator aspect, obviously you don't have to worry about that part of it. But as those pieces come in place, and as I really carefully judge the mobility and how well that fits with the theme, the armor kind of tends to center up around that last. Uh, Especially with the way it works in five. K, E, C, E, and T, E. These three categories, and I don't always come into all my designs with a specific objective for defenses. They have to be this. In fact, defenses, interestingly enough, are usually my polishing touch for my design. I'll look at where it's standing after I built up that theme, after I built the mobility to where I like it, after I've kind of constructed and melded this frame, and then I'll look carefully where the rest of it's sitting. And thinking about the most common things you'll encounter in the battlefield, what you tend to see, taking a look at some of the current meta, what people are posting, and some of the things you've seen used a lot, whether that's on free battle through the new world mode and everything else we have, and just take those things into consideration as well. If you have a giant hole in a certain portion of your defense of a weapon, the weapon type you assume you're going to run into a lot, it probably won't serve you too well. I'm a fan of. I've always been a fan of balanced defenses. I love mid weights. I think my two biggest periods for lightweights were Silent Line, and then in Nexus. I had a lightweight there I really enjoyed. But for the most part, I try to round those categories out as best as possible. And you got to be realistic about it. That won't always work out how you need. In fact, that can end up damaging your design for some cases. And some things they'll fall as they may or as they will. But those are some of my key tenets I start out with, and I always ask, where's it sitting? How fast is it? Do I pack a kick? And have I matched my theme and my initial goal that I set out to accomplish?
And you touched on something a little bit here that I think I think that AC5 and Verdict Day, at least so far with Verdict Day, I mean, jury's still kind of out as far as all that. A lot of people are still learning a lot of the parts and how they function and such. But I think for the most part, Verdict Day and five hit this very well, especially with five
Hmm.
when it came to balance. Sorry.
Hmm.
Yeah, when it came to balance, I think five again. I've said in the past, five is the most balanced AC game to come out, and I think that's because I mean, when you played the game long enough, be it whatever version, you will learn sooner or later what matters most, or
Hmm.
all the different factors that matter. Mobility, generator, and or radiator, and how well those are functioning, uh, speed,
Hmm.
uh, power, defenses, and in the past there were definitely combinations of parts that would give you greater advantages in different areas, and
Hmm.
they would seem a little unbalanced. I'm not talking to the point of broken, but it was kind of obvious. Okay, well this weapon deals a great amount of power, the velocity is good, and it's lightweight. So, but it's five did a really good job of really just if you want to do this, you're really gonna have to sacrifice in this area,
Hmm.
and if you want to build an AC like this, you're really gonna have to sacrifice here.
Right.
And I, this is why I say that five was so good and balanced, and I'm going to assume Verdict Day because it's working with in large part the
Hmm.
same system. Will do just as well in this category. While sometimes it feels very restrictive, I think that's exactly by design, and so that's part of what interests me so much, at least with this generation of Armored Core, because
Hmm.
you really do pay for these situations. And so when you're talking about how the process in which you get to where you're happy with things, and that's a lot of what this conversation was. That's really a lot of what I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about was how do you get to this point? What do you weigh and how do you weigh it when it comes to building your AC?
Hmm. Another thing I think that kind of comes in with the theory crafting element, kind of following the title of what we have here. Historically, the theory element for me used to fall. It started with weapon velocities. Okay, I highlighted this in a number of podcasts, but way back when we did not have the stat for what was the speed of a projectile or how fast it moved. We had people in the community that came together and helped compile that information for us, and a lot of it was testing. A lot of it was heavy, theory crafting about what parts, or like what weapons or elements would come together best to give you the best, velocity package for what you were trying to do, so on and so forth. Uh, that was a huge element of it. Obviously, that's not the case now. And with what we have to craft and come up with, I think some of this comes down to kind of thinking beyond the grain. Okay, it's one thing knowing what are the prevalent designs, what are some of the main frames and weaponry that's out there, but I think it's another to take your personal touch, what you want to achieve with your design, and see how you can most effectively run that in the battlefield, even if it might not be something that's, say, very popular right now, or that's you see on a lot of designs where that's really spread and that's super ubiquitous. It doesn't have to be the case. And I think that's a great thing. AC still gives you room to do that, even though, like you were saying, restrictive Tierson. There are some things that definitely hold you back a little more. Weapons themselves are certainly more drainy than they used to be. That some of those things used to be focused more in frame in other pieces, but sniper rifles, I think, are a great example too. Just the amount they pull from your design and how naturally that will come into affecting your mobility in a way, in form of your refresh. So when we talk about this idea of not just designing, not just building towards your theme, but theory crafting too, you're going to have a ton of different answers within that. Okay, there's a ton of different viewpoints with how people approach that question, and it's going to be different, pilot by pilot. I think some will craft to really come up with that next innovative design, and really push an idea. I know there was just a great quad design, for example. A lot of this became known on JP side during AC5. Ran off of Beluga, frame with Animas and a number of other pieces. It was a CQ sniper, and some of those things weren't as popular at the time, but it was a really, really solid theme that really, really took off. And I think it's important to note that those factors can still be done. That's still there. But I think it takes a willingness to kind of explore it. It's so easy to hit a brick wall with your design and just give up. I've done it a ton of times, okay? Like, I'll feel so down that that theme that I wanted or what I wanted to achieve, it's like, crap, I missed it. I just didn't achieve out of what I want. But, it'll be on the back burner. I'll tend to revisit it and come back. And I usually find if I revisit it with a fresh perspective, that's when I can get the most results out of it. And I'll usually approach it in a different light then and try to turn that design around. So I think that's a key. That's really the Armored Core. I mean, if you're willing to persist, not just with your design, but with this series, you will find some amazingly rich content. That's just really what the series comes down to. And it just definitely takes a bit of patience sometimes because you won't always get it on your first try. You won't always get that thing you want, but nature of the beast.
Well, no, and I think ultimately because things are as balanced as they are, you will find that, like I was saying, you won't be able to build that perfect AC. There's not that perfect set of parts
Hmm.
that'll make it happen for you. A lot of it, at the end of the day, because things are the way they are, you will come to the conclusion I need to build the best AC for me. And
Hmm.
obviously, there's a point of building an AC to learn and broaden your horizons on that. But when it comes to building an AC that you want to take to a competition or
Yeah.
that the one that you want to use against people, you
Yeah.
will build you will build the AC that's best for you. And in that way, and this is actually why I'm kind of surprised that we don't have more veterans playing this game from the PS2 era, because I mean that's a lot of what it was. You heard a lot about back in the day how being original and
Hmm.
expressing yourself in that manner. I mean I feel like AC5 and Verdict Day are all about that,
Hmm.
and so so at the end of the day, if the proper balance is there, then you will come to the conclusion that you just need to build the best AC for yourself.
Yep.
And but like I said, we hear a lot about this in the posts. Um, a lot of it does come down to theme,
Hmm.
the original concept. That's what a lot of people focused on. Now, before we get to that though,
Hmm.
I noticed at least in five, and I haven't actually had a chance to go and do any verses with you yet in Verdict Day. Um, your favorite AC ended up being obviously quad, but it was a Fortress quad with sniper rifles, was it not?
I usually use that on Alpine and a couple of the other maps. My favorite was more of a mid design. It had snipers too. I had a Fortress design with snipers, and I actually had a mid with snipers as well, but similar theme. And it was the mid that was pretty much my favorite. It used to be the dual K saw, but I don't know. I kind of gravitated away.
Case saw. Case.
But
I'm not a real big fan of the case saw in five. Actually, the new one that they came out with, the third version, the one in between the two, I haven't had a chance to test that out too much yet. That looks interesting, but
right, right. And a lot of that again comes in a theme. Some of those things, especially when you have a very limited ammo count and you're really focusing your AC towards a specific theme or to get a specific volley of fire off, uh, that naturally that's going to be a whole different design parameter there. You won't be able to achieve the same thing as say large ammo capacity loadout or whatnot. You have to follow that theme as closely as you can and really really be sparing with your ammo. But if it's something you enjoy, it can run. It can run, and you can use it.
well, for myself, I mean, that actually up until verdict day, where in the conversation we had here a few days ago, I've officially declared that my main AC not be a middleweight biped, and that is the first. That has been the first since I've been playing Armored Core. I would always have a lightweight here and there, but no, I've switched to lightweight bipeds now. I
Mm.
don't care if I'm on that bandwagon. They're running awesome right now. And so if there is a bandwagon for playing lightweights right now, and as well there should be. They're doing awesome. But this is something that I in five I struggled a lot with maneuverability,
Mm.
as did a lot of people. There's been many posts on this. just never quite happened. In the latter end of five, I actually started running a well underweight middleweight AC, and that worked a lot better. I just with this latest game, I've actually officially switched over to lightweight,
Hmm.
something again which wasn't my main AC, but I always had at least one or two. I was fairly well versed in them. Really enjoying it. I found since there is such an emphasis on lack of mobility in five, I've actually found that that is something that's quite important to me. Something that just previous games, I guess you could say I took it for granted. And again, I struggle
Hmm.
with it most of five, but yeah, the mobility, generator, how that regens, that's important to me too. Watching numbers for that. Boosting speed, definitely critical. These things are, they take a huge emphasis,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny because that at least in five, and I think it's going to be the same again here. And actually, I spoke about this a little bit last week with Moonwalker here. My second AC through most of five was my tank.
Hmm.
I had my middleweight biped, but then I had a tank, and I loved running with my tank. That thing it was hilariously fun. Oh yeah, just blow people up with those heat cannons. That was just too much fun. But and actually the further hindering of mobility when it comes to the tanks in Verdict Day, I'm actually having a big issue with
Mm.
that. I may not be able to continue using a tank, which is a shame because I mean, in all previous games, tanks kind of sucked. I mean, people if you want to debate that, go ahead. But let's be honest, tanks sucked. They got the crap into the shit stick, and just they never really could do much. I mean, yes, there was the occasional good tank, and I know Cleric. I'll probably hear an earful from him on this topic, but that's fine. He knows it as well as I do. We all pretty much know it. Tanks suck. But five was the game for tanks, and so I really had a lot of fun with that. I really enjoyed it. But back to it though. Mobility obviously a big factor, and I mean obviously each leg type moves differently, and I will play with all the different types and try to get to know them. I enjoy reverse joints a bit, a little bit too slow in some areas for me though, and quads. As much as you love quads, it's almost as I don't like them. I've never quite gotten into quads, which has always been a shame to me. I've always liked playing with quads, but
Right.
I just never could quite get into working with the emphasis of what's good about them. For someone like myself who likes to fly around all the time, and you know
Hmm.
me, dude,
Yeah.
I am like kamikaze out there. I will go nuts. I will be relentlessly after my enemy. That doesn't quite work so well with quads, which obviously take a more strategic approach to things in general, at least as far as their advantages.
Yeah.
Something that can move is important to me. And so, stability kind of takes not even a backseat. I think that's in the trunk.
Hmm.
So I don't care about stability too much because I'm trying to be up in your face as it is. So,
See, it's
uh,
it,
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, no. That's an interesting point too. I almost group stability along with mobility in a way. Just kind of, I'm looking at some of these designs because your stab is going to affect so many things, not just the amount of fire you're taking, but like your landing and so many other aspects about your AC. We've had this huge focus about stability and balancing out. That the later we've gone into the Armored Core series, it's felt that this has become way more of an emphasis. And I think especially for playing quads, it's always something to consider. I guess why I got into them so much was I love the combination between what I feel is a like a biped and almost like a tank. They almost feel like a more mobile tank. They're able to bring a good punch and a very solid like amount of fire support on a mobile set of legs, which has always been great. In the past that translated to moving cannons or having more missiles and loading up more extensions and having just a really nice loadout while keeping mobile with it. You had your exceptions that I think poked into quad territory, even went beyond it in some cases. I know a lot of players. I never saw tanks in mass, but our exceptions like LHT-92, and Nexus. My goodness, like those were amazing tank legs, and a few of those crept in every now and then. But other than that, they stayed pretty much on the same base.
It's kind of funny because I mean you're talking about case saws and sniper rifles, and I'm actually kind of the opposite. Of course, during the golden era for Armored Core, I actually had a staple dual rifles. That's
Hmm.
that's what I ran. As soon as they let us do it, I was running that. I was loving it, and I ran that for years. That was my thing. The dual staples. They're dual rifles, and in fact, I believe my favorite of that combination is when they came out with the heat rifles. All about those. I think those came
Hmm.
out in Nexus. Am I? I don't know. Um,
The linear rifle? What's the ones you're looking
oh,
for?
geez, I don't know.
The
But anyway, so that that kind of came in further into this. And actually, now I run a laser rifle and a regular rifle to get a bit of variance in there. I love their laser rifles in the game. Don't not such a big fan of the charge time, but definitely still enjoying rifles this day. But I like the faster guns. Find it kind of hard to justify things like the K saws and even as far as battle rifles. Definitely, again, I like to be in your face and shooting you up as much as I can. So, but I will try. When it comes to my builds, I will try that. And again, like many of the people who posted here, I will go with a theme, and maybe my theme is as simple as, all right, let's just try a different type of leg from
hmm
what I use, or maybe I'll come up with a cool combination of weapons, and that'll fit a certain different type. My themes, my original concepts will kind of go across the board. Be it like I said, a certain type of AC, certain weapon combination, maybe just something that I think is really cool looking. And this is one of my favorite things about Armored Core is the fact that you can delve into all of this and actually
Yeah.
have it end up well, or it could end up like crap. I'll have to go back to the drawing board. But
You
I'll eventually, what I'll do is I'll end up with like a dozen or so ACs, and then I'll be like, well, I have too many. I'm not going to manage all this. And then I'll actually start trying to put a couple of them
hmm.
together.
Wow, so you curve it down from there. It's funny. There's usually a couple frames I'll start with at a time. I've never had a really large garage with just overflowing with designs. Because I tend to put a lot on each design that I actually go into, and I'll usually end up with 4 or 5 that I really enjoy, a couple for fun designs. But that whole idea, that process of getting a really drawn out garage and then kind of narrowing that down into what you want to do later, uh, that's interesting. I think, and you have some people who are really focused on their main design. I think Zo4 would be a great example of that too. He has a main staple that that is his design that he will just
That's
run.
all he uses
Yep,
ever.
he will run that in the ground, and that's what he focuses on. And again, AC gives you the freedom to do that. Hey, going back to the other point you said too about choosing a theme, it doesn't even have to be a complicated process. I think you'd identify really well with Not Hunter. I think he was on the first page of post in this thread. But he just said, I pick an idea and I run with it. Crazy AC that flies through everything? Let's do it. Super fast tank? Let's do this. End of story.
A lot of my ACs I'll never use a free battle. Like I said, I'll come up
hmm
with a bunch and at least have a distinct theme to them, and I will see
hmm
if I can mesh some of them together. And at the end of the day, it worked great. If
hmm
not, oh well. That sucks, but it just didn't work, or it just didn't work for me. Maybe it would have
hmm
worked well for somebody else. I'm not one of those players, and it's kind of funny because most of the people that I played with in real life with Armored Core, they are. I will not make several different variations of the same AC.
Right.
You have a lot of people that'll do that. Either just be it a couple differences as far as the core parts or the weapons, but they'll have like 10 different saves in the same AC with like just a simple variation in their name to remember which one's which. That I actually don't do that. I actually make an issue not to do that.
Mm.
This is not how I go. It's we're talking about themes and concepts, and so I mean there it is. I mean I'm not going to have different versions of it. I'm
Right.
trying to nail something down here.
What about different versions game to game? I think some of this pans right into the concept of staples. It's fairly common for a lot of players to have an evolution of their main design between ACs. I'm this was pretty much the thing I ran with, especially back in PlayStation 2. My main AC, Ragnarok, I would have a different incarnation and upon a different AC game. I usually wouldn't leave the frames the same. There's usually something I keep similar. I'd usually run a GNL in the design, but that might be the only thing similar. Other than that, the weapon loadout would be the same. But I'd try to build upon that idea, what I wanted to achieve with that design, and just make the theme stronger each time. And I rename it sequentially, Mark II, Mark III, so on and so forth. That's just what I ran with for the longest. Does that process change for you at all between Armored Core games? Would you want to move a design into another and try to build upon that theme, or would that still be too sameish for you? It's still too much of a cop out.
No. That's different altogether. I mean,
Hmm.
that's making a new gen version
Yeah.
of an AC that you loved. And now, in this case, obviously, again, we're talking about a distinct difference from AC5 from the previous games. Honestly, a lot of my staples went bye bye.
Hmm.
There was a couple of them that have kept, and at this point for verdict day, I'm not sure if anything more than my main AC is gonna make
Hmm.
it past this version, which is fine. I've had ACs come and go. Some that started in the original AC one generation, made it to two, didn't make it to three. Some of them started in the AC two generation, made it to
Right.
three. And obviously, we know that I didn't play four, at least not much, but it made it into five, but didn't make it
Hmm.
into version eight. And some of them, I played them a lot, and maybe AC three and in those games, but
Hmm.
even further down in the expansions, I let it go. But I do
Right.
still have one main design that I started with AC2, and
Hmm.
same AC's got the same name every time, same basic look. That changed a lot with the rifles.
Hmm.
I fell in love with dual rifles when we were able to have a gun in each hand. Um, that I use today, and same basic color scheme, same try to keep the same basic look, and that matters. We haven't talked a lot about looks yet, but that
Hmm.
does play a role as well.
Oh yeah.
Uh, but as time has gone, they some have come and some have gone, and of course, I thought I was going to have a new one in tanks, but I've come up with a much better concept for a new tank now. So
Looking forward to seeing the name on that, man. That's gonna be fun. Shoot.
we'll see if anyone notices. No one ever, hardly anyone ever said anything about my fun emblems. I love playing with the emblem creator in five, and get a lot of comments on them. So I'm not so sure if people really pay attention to that. I love that shit. When you get out of free battles with me, you'll notice sometimes it'll take me a minute or two to come back. That's because I'm looking at everyone's ACs and I'm looking at their emblems before you get back into the main lobby. I'm looking at all that stuff. And I'm like, God, that's so cool. Or I'm like, that's so stupid.
We had a couple of notes about that too. I think in the thread, I know Drac had posted on the first page about aesthetics over function, and when that becomes more of the focus. And then I think on the second part of it, we had some notes about emblem. And I think that was still on the first page, but no, as far as what emblem generation does for your design, I'll be honest, emblems were something aesthetically that I didn't focus on until later in the series, and even back, AC2, I went with what was it, the radiation emblem? And I made some changes to that, and built upon it. It was really simple. But no, it's this is something that can tie directly into your scheme. When we're talking about style coming into play with your design, function's one thing, but looks another. And I think for some people, maybe it's the paint scheme, and the emblem that play more of a role. For others, it could be the look of the parts. Now, for me, I'm the latter. It's always been the look of the parts. I used to have a fixation with the visor style heads, and by visor style, I'm talking about like the egret head, AC2, or the Kurma from AC5. Heads like that. I love the look. I've always loved the design, and those have just always fit so well. And that's kind of persisted today. I'm a little more lenient with it, just because of what we have in the KE heads. I freaked out about the KE heads, by the way. I love that they had the whole Arthurian myth, the names of knights behind them, but that's another story. I think aesthetic in the look definitely comes into play. I'm usually more concerned with the how all the parts, especially the frame and the weapons, how those marry and how those come together on a design. I think we were talking before we started. I know Pearson, you said you kind of despise the stick head for
Oh,
for a biped, and you
I don't.
won't do it.
It's funny because I mean I'm thinking about this. I care about how things look when it
Yeah.
comes to bipeds. When it comes to anything else, I do not care. I care all about the function of what I'm trying to build. I don't care at all about looks. I'll fix that when it comes to the paint job. But only the bipeds is weird like that. I don't know.
Some of this though, even the parts, just because we have so much more flexibility now with the paint and emblem creator than we did in the past. I mean, I'd go as far as to say that your paint schemes, even, and especially your decals, because some decals are just crazy detailed. It can really, almost effectively, kind of shift, the whole even look, or sometimes even the feel and the shape of your parts, depending how you pattern things and depending how you do your layering and how it looks. I think that's awesome.
Oh, I
It's
uh, Yeah, I did a little versus the other day. I came across somebody who painted his AC to look like Starscream from Transformers.
That's great. It's,
Some of that stuff in the past with five, some people made their ACs. They painted with the build and the paint job and decals. They look like Optimus Prime or Megatron or something. But it's the first Starscream I ever saw.
it's a huge evolution from having your emblem pretty much relegated to your left arm, the left side of your shoulder, to the way you can expand it now. I mean, if you want to obviously take your emblem and decal that in a way or build upon it, you can. There's ways to expand upon that. You want to do small text or about anything you can think of. It's possible, and just the freedom you have to apply those things throughout your whole scheme now, I think is really really slick. As fans, we'd asked for this for so long. I mean, I remember when people were always wondering about, when can we color weapons, or when are we going to be able, to shift this part or this part. And it's been a slow build. It's been a really slow build. But if there's anything, I think unanimously, the AC series has done right is constantly built the paint shop, has built
Uh,
built the emblem
they,
generator.
they gave us so much customization as far as paint and decals and
Yeah,
stuff. I was
yeah.
legitimately just a bit angry when I went to paint when I went to put decals on my weapons and I couldn't.
Still missing. But see, that shows it. No matter what they add, there will always be something missing because there's always just that obvious thing like, okay, this function is here. These decals are here. Why can't I apply these to this?
Exactly.
Take the next step.
This is where you drew the line. I can, it's like why? No, I'm actually I think there's an understandable technical reason why you can't do that with weapons. Just like some of your AC plating, you
Yeah.
can't actually decal either, which actually is quite common with the retrofits, which is actually a bit of a not
hmm
even a full point beat, not a full point negative for them for me, but it's definitely it's a notable. There's an asterisk there. Cannot make cool decals with retrofit parts as much. So, but well, and again, I've talked about it in the past. I decal the crap out of my AC. There's all kinds of stuff on there. So when I've got a really cool part, but I actually I can't put a decal on it like I'd like. I get angry. The CRC. So
There you go. There's one thing I want to look at real quick. This has just been kind of stirring. It was from Crudel's post near the end of the thread. It was, in fact, right on top of your post. And he made this note about, I guess, just unpassable bridges, okay, or things you wouldn't breach about your design. It could be something with paint scheme, okay, it may very well be, or it could be something part-wise, but he was focusing on something part-wise. I want to take a look at that a second. He said that there is one rule set that I absolutely must follow by when I'm building. And he's talking about the usage of his energy, and specifically here, uh, he looks to have like 7,500 energy regain. And it kind of made me smile, and I started to think about these immutable rules people won't break. Obviously, I can identify with that. I'm a quadruped freak. I refuse to use a design if it's not a quad, and that's my one rule I'll never break. And I'm wondering how much does that spread for people when they do designs or when they're crafting? Is that rule just really light, flimsy, fragile for you? You're willing to bend it if you run across something you really like, or just absolutely you will stick with this point till the end of the world, regardless? I wonder.
I'm sure it is. In fact, I bet you would find that a lot of people have the energy regen one. We commented on that before the show. I thought
hmm
75. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Uh, that's a lot of energy regen. For me, in five, actually, the number for that for me was 5K.
Mm.
But that I found that definitely verdict day energy regen's a lot
Oh yeah.
less, not nearly as strict. You definitely have a lot more to play with in that regard. So I think actually 7,500 at least now probably works really well. But I mean, if this is relating from five to verdict day, he's probably looking at like a 9,000 or 10,000 energy. No, just kidding. But I thought that was a little high, but I bet you will find that a lot of people have that. There's a
Mm.
certain, one thing that is fairly universal, depending on what you're building, is your energy regen, and
hmm
I'm sure there's a comfort level for people when it comes to, seeing that bar go up at least in a like manner for all their builds. That comes more down to decision making
Right.
in mobility, which I think for most people tends to be a bit more universal on some things.
Yeah.
So I bet you'd find that a lot.
True. And sometimes it can even be something really small that makes that influence or that change. It might not be an unbreakable rule. I know Xenos, right above that, in fact, had a note that sometimes even the count of recons on a core has an influence on his builds for what he wants to do. And that's
Same.
another interesting point. But no, go ahead. What do you have about that?
I just said same.
Same deal. Usually in most ACs we'll get some kind of key feature or something that jumps out about each one. And during the 4 Gen, one of the newest things we had introduced was stabilizers. We had not seen stabilizers in any previous AC, and that's something that didn't continue over into 5. Here in 5, we were given recons. This is another function that had never been used in the AC series before, mainly due to how radar works now. That's just completely shifted.
There's
So
radar.
if you want to call it that.
Let someone tell me about this.
If you want to call it
I
that.
radar. So
It's hilarious running into that. You see how stuff like that sticks. It's I still call it that. It's great. But yeah, you've got the recons and the way those form, and again, uh, depending on what you're doing for your design, or depending on what you're going for, what types of battles you think you're going to be in with that design, that can indeed play a huge factor. Especially the type of recon you're using and what you're trying to do, or how efficiently you want to get your scan and whatnot. How what kind of area of detection do you want? There's a lot to that, and it's interesting because it's such a small piece of your design, at least when you take it into terms of weight and energy drain. But the impact that it actually has in the field and the way you use it, I mean, it's pretty enormous. So,
you say that, and this was huge when in 5 the patch came out and they took away recon weight. I thought that was awesome. That gave me like a couple 100 pounds to play with.
yeah.
Obviously, now in sense that they don't weigh anything anymore except to worry about energy, but it's kind of negligible.
Mm.
But yeah, that was a big deal. It's like wow, they took away recon's weighing anything on your AC, and it's like oh, this is actually going to allow me to put on a couple things on my AC that I just couldn't because of that. So that was pretty cool, and I'm glad they transitioned that into Verdict Day.
Definitely. It's like how many times, have you been blocked by it's just oh shoot, there's that's a 60 weight I want to get under. There's that 32 that's just bothering me and that will not change. That's one of those little shifts that
My
helps
my
you
main AC
overcome.
right now is 4 pounds overweight,
There you go.
and and it only cost me 1 point in speed. So I'm like, fuck it. So if I'm going between 190 and 191 because of 4 pounds, fine, I'll deal with it.
Well, here's the good part about that. You won't have an overweight buzzer screeching in your ear.
Oh my god, that was so horrible. And then actually, when I made that decision, I'm like, wait, oh no, that's right, that's not anymore. That was oh my god. When did that stop? Did they persist with that in 4?
Um, no. That wasn't there. I believe that ended with the PS2 generation. And they started to go into just, noticeably decreased mobility and performance or not being able to use, your design in certain areas or whatnot. But no, the buzzer essentially, I believe that ended with PS2. So,
That was so horrible. I mean, it was like, oh, cool, we can actually go in overweight. They're gonna let us do it. Okay, yeah, we have to give up mobility, but and then it's like, oh, but they didn't tell you that you'd have a
for
god
sure.
awful sound that would give you a migraine in 5 minutes.
I think it's really interesting how it works in 5. I'm gonna take a quick compare and contrast on that. With 5 and the overweight system, obviously, as you notice, when you fluctuate your weight, you start to also fluctuate, your stability in different ways too. And it's interesting how the two kind of interact and play together. You're not gonna get a massive alarm going off over your head about it. But no, there have been other builds in the past, and from other streams, especially early AC5. They some of the JP streams, they kick off a match with sentries, drop a few, and immediately purge the part. The whole idea of coming in overweight, and I can't help but look back and see how that tactic used to be implemented and whatnot. There are designs people would craft around, people would build around doing this. Okay, being overweight, the way you'd come in, it was a common thing, and that normally it was to use a large volley or a certain weapon right up front at the beginning of the match and then purge. And sometimes I felt this could kind of be a disadvantage to players. I will never forget, I believe it was ACMM2, and the player across from me, I heard the buzzer. I heard it going off like crazy, and it was immediate sign to me that there's something he wants to drop immediately at the start of the match. Because I heard it now. Again, we don't have that anymore, and LAN
Right.
is not what it used to be. But I felt that kind of worked against people in a personal setting, and just kind of a little funny caveat. So
You went after him like a rabid dog on red meat, didn't you?
yeah, well, it gave me a free GNL shot. So what can I say?
Well, yeah, I
But
mean, in that I always found in the past that if you're going to go in overweight like that, either you have to drop that thing in a few seconds, or you're actually kind of have to have an overweight build that can take a few hits while you use up whatever you're
yeah,
trying to throw out and ditch. So,
exactly.
um,
And we talk about that too in terms of theorycraft, sound cues and whatnot. It's so crazy. I made a few comparisons to it in the past, but I look at fighting games for that. You have players that master techniques and feel whether it's off. It could be off muscle memory, but a lot of things are off sound cues as well. That especially in like the Street Fighter community, people even in MK they'll know to respond to a certain situation like off a cue or what's punishable or what can be countered or what they have safe frames against. And in AC, I don't know if people's process is different. Like this is going beyond the garage, obviously, but sometimes you do run into that in terms of how you go for something, or if you're really attuned to it, or how you're listening for a laser charge or whatnot. That could be the case, but yeah, that's just one of those little things that's kind of beyond the garage.
all right, so I think now's a good time to take a break,
Yeah,
do a little breaky poo, and then yeah, I said that, and then we'll come back and we'll go more into detail as to what the people who posted, like who posted and what they do, their themes and concepts, how they approach this, and we will be very critical of all of them. Make fun of. So absolutely, absolutely not. No, but yeah, no, we'll go into detail. And, we'll see how people approach this. We'll talk about specifically when we come back in a few minutes.
stay tuned.
Hey guys, welcome back. I'm kind of driving Zealous a little crazy here. We were on the break. And, our previous conversations actually brought back a good old memory that he's going to love. Something that this was very short lived in our record. We didn't see this for very long, but I remember having a hell of a lot of fun with it. We're talking about part drops. Um, for a short while there was part pickups.
Okay, that's where you went. I was wondering what you were going to talk about.
Very short lived in the Army Corps series. Something to
True.
think about though when you were thinking about building an AC that would drop parts immediately, or maybe later on. Maybe you throw something out there and you'd want to use something and then drop that part and pick the other one back up.
hmm
Uh, yeah, it didn't last for long, which was always a really cool concept, I thought.
It was. It's so funny you mentioned this. There's actually a thread semi-dedicated to this over at Raven Republic forums. I was reading this about, I don't know, maybe about half an hour before we came here. But yeah, it's a thread regarding it's called Ideas for the Next AC Game That Don't Suck, and it was started by Sirius 140. And in fact, he was the guy that posted this. He was saying he hopes for not only more physical weapons, but able to pick up weapons. Maybe pick up drop weapons or use things and be able to use them against your AC. It just brings back real fond memories. You could even make goofy tactics with that way back when if you really wanted to count on drops, which have someone just nab a weapon or it was a pretty funny mechanic. Especially because you could get somebody for littering with that. You could have so much green on the ground after a while. It was wild. But I'm sure people made some really fun formats with that and goofed around with it. I could have sworn someone from the East Coast scene used to goof around with doing switches, dropping weapons, then OBing across one another and picking up each other's weapons and going for it. Man, I'd almost forgotten about that. Thank you.
No, no, and Gimby used to do a lot of that. In fact, we used to troll each other with it. We would goof around with the idea and building ACs that did this and almost out of spite. for bringing in a weapon that you would want to use later on, we would grab it. We would grab it and just screw around with it. And actually, part of that theory was to. I remember in some cases, him or I would bring in a part to use later on, and we would go grab that part and just use all the ammo in it, and then drop it again and pick ours back up.
You could just run really silly rotations with it. But yeah, it was super short-lived. I'm not surprised. I could be off on this. Wasn't it just SL or was it 3 and SL? Yeah,
Oh boy, dude, I don't even
it's
think I think
rough.
it was after Silent Run, wasn't it? It was definitely within the AC3 games,
It
but
was.
um,
I don't remember it during Nexus because that's when we got all the heat and the energy changes and whatnot. But I'm pretty certain it was in SL. I just don't know if it was in 3 as well. So
well, I don't even remember if it was the last Raven.
definitely not.
Last Raven brought the part destruction, but
Right. Right.
geez, yeah, I don't know. Maybe somebody can remember a little bit more because
Help
I'm an
us
old.
out. Help us out.
Let us know. Tell us in the thread. How long did that last? Because it was a cool concept, but at the same time, think about it now. Whenever it disappeared, I don't think there was a lot of complaining. Maybe it's just I don't know. It seemed fun enough. I do remember that you had to master picking up parts. That was
Yeah,
not
you
easy
did.
to do at first. You had to be in that thing like a needle.
It was really precise, really pinpoint. This goes back to what we were saying, before the break too. These little elements of AC that have been in and then are gone. Sometimes it's something as radical as a category addition or something like, a stabilizer or recons and whatnot. Other times it's a gameplay element. It's something really subtle that's just put in and it's there one day and then gone the next. But yeah, this wasn't mourned. You didn't have much gnashing of teeth about this when it was lost. So
And where's my extension parts? Extensions and optional parts. Where are they? I, I miss them dearly.
oh man,
Okay, so
alas.
hmm?
I said alas, alas.
Yeah, they better bring them back. They better bring them back. Anyway, so we were going to spend the second half basically, going through everyone's posts,
Hmm.
and kind of just talking about how other people specifically approach the theory crafting behind their ACs.
Yeah, some of these things, some of the lighter points we touched on, in our first half. We use that to kind of expound some of the ideas about theory crafting and building designs and whatnot. But looking at some of these closely, and this shows that this is something that a lot of fans just enjoy talking about. In fact, we had another fresh post about it just even during the break from Mechanized, and heck, I might as well just even start with that just because it's so fresh.
Oh, you can start at the bottom.
Yeah, let's go there. Let's go there. Just one.
He posted last. He should be
Just
last.
this one. Just this one. I know. Rewarding the last guy, right? Come on. Go with me here. Just this part. Okay. Uh,
Going backwards, but whatever.
all right, all right. Mechanized mentions he says that this is going to sound pretty impractical, but my ACs generally come from ideas or concepts that do not have a solid application. It's not uncommon for me to write down a list of things that my AC would consist of as a concept that doesn't make a full AC. And then he ends it with, depending on how familiar with I am with the parts or how much thinking I want to do at the time, this can include a name, paint scheme, emblem, rough approximations, so on and so forth. So, it's kind of, we spoke about a concurrent theme, and that's style, or theme rather, of what you're trying to narrow said design to do. And I think for some that's something that's very, very, very important early on. Others it narrows down as the parts are constructed, or when you find a nice frame or a good weapon loadout to suit you. But in his example, sometimes others don't think on those lines of having an immediate solid application or like a theme without a style. That's really alien to me personally as a player. It's a little hard for me to identify with, especially because that's one of the things I tend to come into a design with. Obviously application is the end goal, but that theme of how I'm going to get there and that style used to design and pilot it is all going to play into those things. And man, maybe for some of you that's really comfortable being really just loose, really nebulous coming into your designing process. I don't know. What do you think, Terrison?
That's yeah, that's not me at all.
Yeah.
I will be inspired by a certain type of build of some sort. I'm it's kind of funny because I mean we have a lot of people that are saying that they'll be inspired by an emblem or by a color scheme and such. I will actually come up with that while I'm creating the AC,
Hmm.
and while I'm building the concept that I had as far as weapons or what the focus is of that AC in general. That will dictate to me the color scheme to it. And at some point the emblem. I will create for any of my main ACs that I'll ever use in free battle. I will create a custom emblem for them. I'm old school like that. I did that. I've been doing that since I've been playing the game. So I believe that if the concept came to this point where I will actually use the AC in competition or just a free battle, it deserves its own emblem. That's just where I'm at with it. But
Yeah.
again, I'm an artist, so there's a whole lot that plays into that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, just I can understand a basic premise,
Right.
but yeah, some of this is kind of foreign to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's in fact that kind of it freaks me out a little bit. I think coming into a
It's
design,
you out.
yeah, creeps me out. If I were to
I
approach,
just have to read this.
yeah, I know. I mean, this is like a Halloween special we're starting, right? I mean, now you know some of my nightmares, nonetheless. Just beginning a design, with the really loose base, it's something that's a little more difficult for me to identify with, especially because of the pre-focus I like to have beforehand. But for some that works, some want to just go along with the process. I want to come in and just let me see what I can build upon or what I can go. And I think players change though as time goes on, especially the more they kind of play around with online and whatnot. I think that process is just gradual. So, but
You go. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I said but I am willing to get back at the top of the list. I will not walk backwards on you.
See, I was just going to say we might as well go backwards now. We're
Not,
there.
just covering the fresh guy, just covering the fresh post.
We're the French guy. That could be taken the wrong way out of
Look at this guy, this guy. We go back to the top of our list, and we have Stravern, who mentioned he talked about style. He said, when building ACs, my main focus is style, with stats right next to style. Frame the weapon, I choose parts that will fit me most, my playstyle, and that's what I truly enjoy. Excluding internals, since those have no visual appearance whatsoever. And he said, well, technically they do, but you get the point. So here you have,
that. Actually, I think technically they don't because it's not real.
yeah, but it frames this argument again with style, and then again the stats right next to that, and building, frame the weapon simultaneously. This is what we've been talking about. I think during this segment, I think this is probably a similar concept that would resonate with a lot of players. That's one that's easy for me to understand too, and kind of get on the ground floor with and see how someone would approach a design style that way, especially correlating it so closely with your play style.
What I thought was really interesting is he goes on to say, I won't pick a part because, depending on how well it is, how good of a part is it, if it's OP or not,
Hmm.
he'll pick it for the reason that he said.
Hmm.
But even if a part ends up like maybe through a bad patch or if it ends up being an OP part, you'd be like, no, I'm going to use that anyways. I don't care, which is fine.
Hmm.
At least in five it was fine. I mean, back in the day, back with the lanterns and everything, that could have gotten him in some hot water with some of the community. But things are fairly balanced now, so I don't think that's such a big deal.
Right.
I remember with five early on there were issues with shotguns and reverse joint legs, but they ended up fixing that for the most part.
Hmm. Hmm. So, tying into that one too, I think our post right below it connected with it. Oblivion Dolls. I like this one. He said, I look at a balance between form and function, erring on the side of style over substance, but I don't think I lean too far that way. He also says, my aesthetic taste have changed a little over time, and with the changes in graphics, I'm not as big a fan of some of the parts that I really liked in AC5. He cites UBRs, for example. He said they don't seem to look as good to him anymore, and how he's kind of shifted away away from that concept. So balance between form and function, erring again on the side over substance. Obviously, hey, look at this. You guys like to look good blowing up stuff. I mean, I can respect that. All right, you know,
What, yeah, and I think we both that we care about this to an extent, but
yeah.
I'm sorry, and maybe this is the competitive side of me, to which there is a large part of that.
Mm.
Nothing looks as good as when you have that winner title. Nothing looks as good as the win title. I'm sorry. Maybe that's probably bad to me. Some people are like, oh, I can't believe you said it. But it's true. It's truth, and to that point, I think that will actually dictate, in some sense, what looks good. People, if you have a consistently winning person in a lobby in the games, people will start to look at their AC, and I think that will actually change how they think it looks. It's like, okay, well, okay, maybe this isn't something I would have picked because it's got the stupid popsicle head, but that guy's kicking some ass with the popsicle head.
Yeah, that's one thing that always kind of tones down the style, uh, aspect for me a little bit. It's because the third person perspective from AC. You're always behind your AC. Okay, with five inverted day, where your angle's slightly off, so you can see more of the side angle of your AC. But still, a lot of those awesome aesthetics and changes for a number of designs, were done, on the front side. There's some really cool, back emblems or however you design your AC if you want that, showing towards the back or whatnot. But I always feel like you're missing half your AC because you're usually looking at your back most of the time anyway, and that you're naturally going to miss out on half of that style you put into it anyway. So it's just kind of a funny debate, but
So let's move on to Drac here, who has a lot to say.
he does. Drac says, when I build a design, I usually have some concept that I have when I start building. I generally go function over form, but aesthetics does play a part in my designs. Some parts I just don't use because they are extremely ugly. Some examples are I3 from LR and I believe the Judith head from FA, whatever the fencing mask was. I remember that one, and I agree. He also says that for the concept itself, it could just be a name for his AC, a paint job or a type of AC, sometimes a combination of these or other factors. And he says he does the best to build that AC to be as good as it can for his needs, especially with his LR designs that went through a lot of changes. So pointing to a concurrent line, a concept slash theme from the get go when you start building. But some things you just refuse to touch just because of the look. The radar, the function of the radar heads, I think, is a perfect example. I like them. Some have even given you some really really nice performance, or especially your internals. It usually has to do with your scanning ability and whatnot. But I just don't dig the heads. And that's always a part that's just difficult for me to stick with because even if I'm looking behind my AC, that radar is going to be just sticking right up over the top, and I know it's going to bother me all the time.
Are
So
you talking specifically? Are you talking about Radar Head?
yeah,
Okay, yeah. See, now this is
some
again the
do.
difference between zealous learning part names and me using a common name for it. He'll bring up a certain part of like blah 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 number and letters. And I'll be like, oh, radar head.
There we go again. We talked about this last week.
I have a hard time using radar head too
Yeah,
because unless it's like if it's on a tank or a quad, yeah. But I mean that's not going up like
the other thing Drax said was that it comes down. He says he prefers function over form, but sometimes the form wins out. Originality is nice, but not an absolute necessity unless it's some kind of OP combo. So I think he captures a number of his thoughts pretty well there. And you have a complete contrast that in the next point. I mentioned this in the earlier segment too with Not Hunter. I pick an idea and I run with it. Crazy AC that flies through everything. Let's do this. Super fast tank. Let's do this. End of
that. I like
story.
that.
A direct
I like
man.
this guy, especially he likes super fast tanks. I don't know. I wish I wouldn't have them anymore. But, yeah, no, I like that. That's yeah, that's. I'll be persistent on ideas to the effect of what he's demonstrating here as well. But yeah, sometimes I'll have to let an idea go though too. But I
Right.
definitely like that. Sometimes I'll get on that with a concept.
Jumping down here to Marty Shurin. He says that when I consider on building an AC, I usually base the designs on a playstyle or a part. I usually consider the stats that only matter to the AC. I change stat priorities depending on the AC. Says, for an example, if I wanted to build an HRJ, I consider range, fire rate, jump cap, and defenses. Here you go. This is definitely a little bit of a deviation from some of the initial premises we've had from some other players here. I think it shows some very just precise thinking. I know some players like design like this, basing off of a part, especially right, or a certain part you really want to build around. You could argue that's part of theming or styling, but I think when you cross that bridge and go to the point where you're just looking at the stats that matter, and you can change those stat priorities depending on where your design goes. This is it's a very methodical, very just thought out method of building, and a pretty precise method. It's not as loose as just saying a style or an approach.
And our record today, AC5 and Verdict Day. This is kind of what I was talking about before. You build towards your strengths,
Yep.
and your parts are obviously more so than ever dictating strengths and weaknesses. And you have to balance, trying to balance your AC so that it doesn't have so many weaknesses, but at the same time have something that is definitely going to be strong enough
Right.
to get you through, while at the same time building something that works for you as a player.
Which I think perfectly goes into some of what Xenos expressed. And he was a little baffled at how to approach this at first. He said, "Oh man, how do I make an AC?" He says he picks the weapons that he wants to use and he builds a frame around those weapons. If he cannot get the defenses that he wants, he tries to reconfigure the weapons a bit. So typically he works off of an AC that he already uses a lot and goes from there. And he says, but after all these things, from there, defenses, defenses, defenses. He says go for that 834 TE. And talks about the caps and whatnot. So he pays very close attention to a lot of the factors that are happening. What are some of the things that he's counting on running against, and making sure to round out against that. Hey, an earlier focus on defenses in the designing process. Something else some players would certainly do. I'd commented that defenses are the thing I tend to round out last. I think not because of their low priority, but because I tend to visit those caps and look for those things carefully at the end. And I say, did I reach that? Maybe I'll go back and change this. But this is paramount for his design process, and I think depending on what type of AC you play, that might be paramount for yours too.
Now, this is my rule of thumb,
Hmm.
and I'm a big noob, so at least some people say so. But the rule of thumb I use is the faster the AC, the less defense matters.
Hmm.
So obviously, if you're playing a tank, defense is going to play a big deal in that. You're not going to be able to dodge anything really, or not much. So defense is going to play a big role in that. But obviously, if you're playing a lightweight, your mobility actually becomes your defense more than anything else.
Do not be touched. Move quickly, swiftly. And I think with lightweights now, with Verdict Day, as we've said multiple times, there's a great chance to do that now. It'll be interesting to see, where our patches go. Please let us get our patches, please. But
I keep pushing already. Don't make me bitch about it, Anto. You know I am. I will start
yeah,
and I will not stop.
you will need that, especially with this being, the arguably, well, heck, we're going into PS4 now. Arguably the end of this generation. We'll have to see where that goes. So cross your
Don't.
fingers.
Yeah, we should avoid this topic
We
right
will. I think we will. But looking at Crudel's post, he was the next one in line, and this was our energy man that we highlighted in our first half as well. He has his hard rule about 7,500 energy regen. Mentions that he likes to stick with lightweights and reverse joints.
I just that I really am. I'm really interested in the kind of ACs that he's getting with that. That is such a strict benchmark, and I really want to see, especially in five. Maybe that's for now. Which for Verdict Day that makes a lot more sense. It is very feasible. But even still, I think that's still kind of strict. But if that was his benchmark in AC5, I really want to see what kind of ACs he was getting with that. I'm not saying that they were good or bad or
Hmm.
whatever, but I just wonder if they were like throwing rocks, because it's like that's high. That's just really high.
Yeah.
I want to see more of that crude. I'm gonna go into the garage section of the forums and see if you posted any of your ACs, because I really want to see what you've been able to turn out. And again, not to be critical, but maybe I could learn something from this.
There we go. That's the fun part here. If anything, I think you highlight a key point. If anything, if those of you have read some of your fellow AC players here and their design styles and whatnot, I do hope that's the next common link. Maybe some of you thought of, to go check out the design section and what some people may have posted. There's almost there's a few better ways I think to get good perspective. I think of things and to see some of the other designs that are being cranked out, and what the way people are utilizing parts and how things are done, and it's a great way to follow how the parts evolve. So I believe Legophilia was our next poster, and he didn't go into a whole lot of detail about it, but I want to mention the post. He says, in fact, his I think his post was more of a response to the previous note. You'd made a note, Pearson, that you liked where the thread was going. But he basically just said he never liked the arm and back units for most of the games because they were bland and boring. that they were built around flash and weapon choice and base form. So he doesn't talk a whole lot about his design.
No, in fact,
Um,
he's kind of trolling the post, isn't he?
yeah.
He's
So
kind of the thread.
and we had some banter, and then we pretty much picked back up with Zakatak or Zakatak. I want to say
Yeah,
that.
see, I like what Zach Tack has to say here.
Yeah, he says, in every AC game he's played so far, he's always used rifle weaponry. All right, he says so. I
There,
searched for a good FCS. I know you love this, Tierson. So I searched for a good FCS slash weapon, FCS slash head combinations to get me within mid range. I'll then configure AC to a mid weight frame, as I always have since I picked up Rosenthal for my four answer starters. And he says, yeah, I keep up with just about everything while trying to keep my defenses balanced. So he says, in verdict day terms, that translates to having three defenses at 1K plus, CE normally being the lowest.
that is something that I will reach for as well. Try to have 1,000 on each one.
Hmm.
It is on the lower end of my priorities, my ACs, but it's something that I always at least look at.
Right on. And lastly, we come to Berserk Dragon, another member we'd highlighted earlier. And
That's because you went out of order.
yeah, well now we don't have to do mechanized. We're there. So uh, Berserk, I gotta admit I enjoy this. I got to get off my butt and play you in Magic sometime. You specifically reference Magic the Gathering. That you build your ACs like you build your Magic decks. You start with an idea, something that makes you go, I want to do that, and you go all in with that idea as much as possible. Now, he says anything and everything that forwards the goal of the idea is just thrown together into this nigh unplayable abomination. Then I actually use this abomination to get a feel for the parts of my strategy that I like and what does and does not work. Once I have a base improvement, I can go ahead and start replacing things that make the unit work smoother and more cohesively. So you jam it together and just run in and just see what happens with it. Apparently, huh? So
You
but
know, let's talk about this. It really makes me want to play right
doesn't it? Doesn't it? I know earlier on and before this too, I kind of got in the garage and just really, tooled through, and I kind of smiled. There's different things I know that change about our design processes over time, but it's this has been a pretty steady for me. Naturally, that some people might argue it's simple because of my leg choice that dictates a few things off the bat, but
now. Whoa, life choice.
yeah, I was tooling around in my garage actually before this even just checking, going through some designs, and I, I kind of thought about this a bit, and it made me smile. I thought about my design process a bit, and how things had changed and how it had not changed, and some of it's still obviously really simple for me due to my choice of leg, specifically quads, but you know Berserk's post was just a whole lot of fun. I think he has a more radical version of how he'll roll out a design, and do a lot of that testing live that I think some players may want to do a little more carefully, a little more pragmatically and whatnot, but he just goes for it and puts those things there and isn't afraid to, you know, whether it's success or crash on the design, he'll know what to do from there. So,
All right. Well, I guess I love all the posts here in this thread. I really enjoyed
mhm,
reading this, and I think this pretty insightful. In fact, I mean, these topics come up from time to time, but
mhm,
I have to say that one thing I was a little disappointed that nobody said, only because I want to know that, I want to understand because this is not where I come from. It's obviously where not a lot of other people come from as well. What I want a post from somebody who builds to win. That's the
mhm.
concept. That's the idea. And I just not so much because I don't want to hear from some guy who doesn't understand the game. So like, I pick all the parts that are awesome that I get my butt kicked on. No, I want to actually hear some of the process behind the people that how do you get to that point? You're not building out a concept, you're not building out a theme, you're building to win. And
Mhm.
I want to just hear some of how you go about that. I think that'll do it. I think I think we ran the gauntlet here and everything that we had.
I think so. I think so. So, again, it's been a fun discussion about getting into people's psyche a little bit, how you go about your design process, and what are the important things to you when you're designing, when you're in the garage. Because, again, this is the heart of AC. I mean, regardless of what you do, whether that's, if you're more focused on campaign or free play, if you're more of an offline or online player, it starts there. And it's been a lot of fun to see some insight into how you guys approach that. So thank you for posting. Thanks for sharing. If you have any more things to add, again, please email us at ravensvoiceacl@gmail.com or feel free to post in this thread, which will have a link provided for it for this
Yeah,
podcast.
where's that thread? Why don't you tell them real quick since you're taking my plugs? Go ahead and tell them where that thread is. What is the link that they need to go to, fellas?
They'll find a link in the description below, as if you
I,
look at the title of this vid. And the thread itself is TRV, Theory Crafting the Armored Core in 1213.
I mean, that's a great. What I was looking for was the website that they go to, which is unrelenting.com.
We're going there. We're going there.
Always, at least twice per show.
All right. Good deal. Also, I will I'll post a link again. I don't know if everyone got a chance to see it, but again, the status on the AC vid competition. Griffin's done his submission. I don't believe there's been notes on Deemer's submission yet still, but Griffin's out there. It's great, fun stuff to watch. And that link will also be in the description if you guys want to check that out.
All right, there you go. So, we'll see you next week. Kirsten,
And this is Ellis signing off.
have a good one.